The night is calm in New Haven, Connecticut. It is the year 1839. A faint rain whispers on the rooftops, and a newborn cries in a grand home filled with fine lace and polished wood. Her name is Sarah Lockwood Pardee, and no one yet knows that her life will one day be woven into one of the strangest tales in American history. Sarah was born into comfort. Her father, Leonard Pardee, was a skilled craftsman and inventor, a man who built carriages and believed in the new industrial age. Her mother, Sarah Burns, was graceful and intelligent, ensuring her children received the finest education possible. Even as a child, Sarah was different. She spoke softly, but quickly learned things most children could not. By her teens, she could read Latin, translate French literature, and play piano so beautifully that guests sometimes forgot to breathe. Neighbors called her the Belle of New Haven. Some said her eyes carried both kindness and melancholy, as if she already understood how fragile life could be. When she was 23, the young and intelligent Sarah Pardee met William Wirt Winchester, heir to the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. Their marriage in 1862 joined two powerful names, Pardee and Winchester, at the height of the American industrial boom. The Winchester rifle was known as the gun that won the West. It was efficient, deadly, and lucrative. Every bullet fired, every rifle sold, echoed coins into the Winchester fortune. But where others saw success, Sarah began to sense something else, a weight beneath the gold. For a time, life was blissful. The couple lived in a fine home in New Haven, surrounded by gardens and laughter. In 1866, they welcomed their first and only child, Annie Pardee Winchester. But happiness proved fleeting. Within 6 weeks, baby Annie fell ill with marasmus, a rare condition where the body fails to absorb nutrients. Sarah watched helplessly as her newborn faded, too weak even to cry. On July 25, 1866, Annie died in her mother's arms. That single loss broke something deep inside her. William tried to comfort her, but grief changes a person's soul in quiet ways. For years, Sarah wore black and rarely spoke above a whisper. The sound of her piano, once bright and hopeful, grew slow and sorrowful, minor keys drifting through long, empty rooms. And then, in 1881, tragedy struck again. Her husband, William, fell ill with tuberculosis. He died at just 43 years old, leaving Sarah a widow, alone, childless, and unimaginably wealthy. In a single moment, she inherited over $20 million, along with a 50% stake in the Winchester Company. That's nearly $500 million today. Yet, for Sarah, the fortune felt cursed, built upon the lives ended by the rifle that bore her husband's name. The late 19th century was an age of superstition and spiritualism. Mediums, seances, and ghostly photographs filled newspaper pages. People wanted to believe that death was not the end, that loved ones still lingered somewhere close, whispering through candlelight and table wraps. Sarah Winchester, now a widow at 42, found herself drawn into this world. In her sorrow, she sought meaning. According to legend, she visited a Boston medium known for her powerful trances. The medium, speaking with eerie calm, told her, "The spirits of those slain by the Winchester rifle cry out for you. They seek rest, and you must build them a home, a place where they can wander in peace. If you continue to build, you will live. If you ever stop, you will join them." The message pierced Sarah like an arrow. Whether it was truth, madness, or grief, something inside her shifted. Not long after, she packed her belongings, left New Haven, and boarded a train west, far from the memories, far from the graves, toward a place where she could begin again. The journey took her to California's Santa Clara Valley, a land of rolling orchards and golden hills. In 1884, she purchased an 8-room farmhouse from a local doctor. And there, at the edge of what would become San Jose, Sarah Winchester began to build. At first, the work was modest, repairs, expansions, porches. But the construction soon became endless. Carpenters worked day and night, their hammers echoing even through moonlit hours. Staircases spiraled to nowhere. Doors opened to solid walls. Windows looked into other rooms. Hallways looped like dreams. Locals began to whisper. They said the widow was haunted, and that she built structures to confuse the ghosts who followed her. Others said she built because she could not bear silence, that the constant sound of saws and nails drowned out her grief. Sarah herself never offered an explanation. She rarely spoke to reporters and forbade photography. Workers were hired, dismissed, and rehired again. Plans were drawn, changed, and redrawn in endless variations. As the years passed, the modest farmhouse grew into a 7-story labyrinth with hundreds of rooms, towers, and secret passages. Its walls held not only nails and wood, but also the restless energy of Sarah's sleepless mind. Some say she consulted spirits each night in her seance room, asking them what to build next. Whether this is myth or truth remains unknown. But what is certain is that she lived by one rule: never stop building. Even as she aged, she walked the halls with lantern in hand, wrapped in black, her small frame moving silently through the maze she created. The mansion became her world, a living organism of wood and glass, shifting and expanding as she searched for peace she could never quite reach. The sound of hammers never faded. By day, the air around the valley shimmered with the rhythmic clang of metal on wood. By night, lanterns glowed behind curtained windows as the carpenters worked under Sarah's quiet supervision. They said she rarely slept, walking the halls with a notebook in hand, sketching new corridors in pencil and candlelight. The Winchester mansion was no ordinary home. It grew like a vine, twisting in every direction, forward, sideways, upward, and downward. Every time Sarah felt the whisper of stillness, she ordered something new to begin. A stairway that rose 7 steps before dropping 5. A doorway that opened to a sheer drop into the garden. A window set in the floor. Walls with hidden cupboards, rooms behind rooms, and an elevator powered by water pressure from the hills. The workers didn't question her. They were paid generously, 3 times the normal rate, and they said she was kind, polite but distant, her blue eyes calm and unreadable. Meals were delivered to different rooms, for Sarah rarely dined in the same place twice. Each night, a bell would ring at midnight. The household paused. It was said she entered a small chamber deep within the house, her seance room, lit by candles and mirrors. There she would commune with unseen guests, asking them what to build next. At 2 a.m., the bell would ring again, and the house returned to silence. Whether these stories are true, no one can say. But the effect was undeniable. The mansion never ceased to grow. By the turn of the century, it had over 100 rooms, 2,000 doors, and 10,000 windows. A grand staircase wound endlessly upward, built with shallow steps so the aging Sarah could ascend without strain. Stained glass windows gleamed with cryptic designs, spiderwebs, suns, and the number 13, which she seemed to favor for reasons only she knew. And yet, amid the oddities, there was beauty. Hand-carved balustrades, Tiffany glass that caught morning light like liquid gold, and gardens filled with cypress and roses. Sarah wasn't merely eccentric. She was an artist. She saw the house not as a fortress of fear, but as a canvas, a space that breathed her sorrow, her guilt, and her hope of forgiveness. Sometimes, when workers rested in the garden, they swore they heard music drifting through open windows, soft piano melodies played by unseen hands. Others claimed to hear footsteps in empty halls, or the rustle of a skirt turning a corner that led nowhere. But Sarah walked among these stories quietly. If ghosts lived in her house, she seemed to accept them as companions rather than terrors. Her wealth allowed her solitude. She donated generously to hospitals, churches, and orphanages, though she demanded no recognition. When townsfolk saw her carriage in San Jose, they often bowed or waved politely, and she returned the gesture with a faint nod. To most, she was simply the widow Winchester, mysterious, reclusive, yet not unkind. Years blurred together like the corridors of her mansion, Time seemed to loop, just as her stairways did. She never stopped building. Even when earthquakes shook the earth, she ordered repairs before the dust had settled. To her, stillness was death, and movement was life. The earthquake of 1906 came without warning. In the early hours before dawn, the ground beneath San Jose convulsed. Walls cracked, towers groaned, and the mighty Winchester house shuddered like a living thing. Sarah was in bed when the quake struck. Windows burst inward, and furniture toppled around her. As the rumbling grew, chimneys collapsed, and entire sections of the mansion crumbled into ruin. When the shaking finally ceased, the house had been cut nearly in half. The upper floors were destroyed. Dust and silence filled the air like fog. The servants rushed to find her. They discovered her trapped in her bedroom, pinned behind a heavy door warped by the quake. She was shaken, but alive. When they pried the door open, Sarah stood calm in the debris, holding a single candle. After the disaster, she ordered much of the damaged structure to be sealed off. The 7-story towers were never rebuilt. She reduced the height to 4 stories, fearing the weight of heaven itself might again come crashing down. Still, she resumed construction. Piece by piece, the mansion healed, or perhaps transformed. Some walls were left unfinished. Others were repaired with even stranger designs. She had a door installed that opened directly into open air, 30 feet above the garden. A staircase twisted upon itself like a corkscrew. It was as if the earthquake had changed her dialogue with the spirits, and the new rooms were her attempt to respond. Visitors came rarely. When they did, they described her as small, dignified, always dressed in black, with her silver hair pinned neatly beneath a veil. She would speak gently but briefly, then excuse herself to walk the house, her gloved hand brushing the railings, as though feeling their pulse. She seemed at peace with the strangeness of her life. In her later years, Sarah often sat on her veranda, watching the sunset fade into violet shadows across the orchards. Neighbors sometimes heard her humming, the same soft tune she once played on piano in New Haven so many years ago. The song lingered on the wind, mingling with the creaks and sighs of the mansion. At night, servants said she would light a single candle and wander the halls alone, stopping to study the patterns in the wood. Some believed she still spoke to her lost husband and child, guiding them through the maze she had built, a house where no soul could ever be trapped, because no room was ever truly finished. Night falls softly over the valley. The house exhales. The last workmen have gone home, and only the chirp of crickets and the faint hum of the wind move through the gardens. Somewhere inside the maze of rooms, a single bell tolls 12. Sarah Winchester moves slowly down a narrow corridor, candle in hand. The flame trembles as she passes mirrors and windows that look upon more mirrors and more windows. She stops before a small secret door, her séance room. It has but one entrance and 3 exits, each leading somewhere different, so that any spirit who followed might lose its way. Inside, the walls are paneled in polished wood, the air thick with the scent of wax and lavender. A small round table sits in the center, holding a brass bell, a speaking trumpet, and a shallow bowl of water that reflects the candlelight like liquid gold. Sarah sets the candle down and closes her eyes. She whispers. Sometimes it is the name of her daughter, Annie. Sometimes it is William. Sometimes it has no name at all, only a question sent into the unseen. Am I forgiven yet? No one ever heard the replies, but workers would later say that when the bell rang at 2 a.m, the widow would emerge, pale but calm, carrying new sketches for rooms yet to be built. Somehow, the spirits always had new ideas. By 1910, the mansion had grown to over 160 rooms with 47 fireplaces, 13 bathrooms, 10,000 windows, and 2,000 doors. It was an architectural riddle, a living labyrinth, part dream, part confession. Guests who were invited to stay, rare though they were, often became lost for hours, laughing nervously as they turned a corner that brought them back to where they began. But for Sarah, the maze was home. She had grown old within its wooden veins, her hair silver, her hands delicate and spotted with time. Each morning she rode in her carriage through the orchards, nodding politely to townsfolk who whispered stories about the haunted lady. Each evening she returned to her house of constant motion. And yet, beneath the legend, there was tenderness. She loved her servants, paid them well, and remembered their birthdays. She kept gardens filled with roses, daffodils, and fruit trees whose scent drifted through the open windows. Children from the town would sometimes leave small flowers by her gate, and she would send baskets of pears in return. To those who truly knew her, Sarah Winchester was not a madwoman, but a gentle soul searching for peace in her own peculiar way. The spirits she built for might have been real, or they might have been her grief given shape. Either way, the building was her prayer. As the years pressed on, her steps grew slower, her nights longer. The work never ceased. Even when she could no longer climb the stairs, she ordered ramps to be built so she could still tour her creation. Every creak of the floorboard, every sigh of the wind through the eaves felt to her like conversation. It was a spring evening in 1922 when the hammers fell silent. For the first time in 38 years, no carpenter worked through the night. The widow had gone to her room after midnight, leaving instructions for a new design to begin the next day. A sunroom filled with stained glass shaped like spiderwebs, her favorite motif of protection. But before dawn, she passed away quietly in her sleep. The candle at her bedside had burned down to nothing. When word spread, the workers stopped their tools and set them down where they stood. One by one, they walked out of the house, leaving nails half-driven and boards half-cut. The mansion froze in the middle of its breath. Sarah Winchester was gone. She was 82 years old. In her will, a document written in flowing, steady handwriting, she left her fortune to distant relatives and to charity. The house, however, she left to no one in particular. It was soon sold, and the new owners discovered what she had built. A home with miles of hallways, secret passages, staircases that met the ceiling, doors that opened into thin air, and windows set in the floor. They counted 13 bathrooms, 13 hooks in some closets, and chandeliers modified to hold 13 candles. Everywhere, the number reappeared, her quiet superstition woven into the wood itself. Reporters swarmed to see it. They called it the Winchester Mystery House. They said it was haunted, cursed, or enchanted, depending on the headline. And perhaps, in its own way, it was. Today, if you walk those halls, you can feel it. The hush of history layered over grief and wonder. The sunlight glows through colored glass that Sarah ordered, but never saw installed. The stairways creak beneath your feet, whispering of all the hands that built them. If you listen closely, you might hear the faint echo of a piano drifting through the air like a lullaby from long ago. No one knows if Sarah Winchester ever found peace, but her house seems alive, breathing, waiting, still listening. Maybe she never stopped building because she knew that endings are illusions, that life, like her mansion, is a corridor that turns back on itself, leading us again and again to love, to loss, and to mystery. So if ever you visit the great house in San Jose, and the night wind moves through its empty halls, think of the woman who dreamed it into being, a widow who carried her sorrow not in silence, but in architecture, shaping her grief into something vast enough for the spirits and the living to share. And as the stars settle over the valley, and the house sighs once more, let yourself rest in her story. The hammers are quiet now. The candle has gone out. But the dream, the endless, whispering dream, still stands.